All right, buckle up, everybody, because we are heading straight into 16th century Malta for a deep dive into a world of, well, let's just say sizzling intrigue, where the lines between good and evil are more than a little blurred.
Definitely blurred.
Yeah, and we're talking about Christopher Marlowe's The Jew of Malta.
A classic.
Oh, absolutely a classic. And we've got this fantastic academic paper that you sent our way to help guide us through it.
It's a good one. Lots to unpack.
Oh, tons to unpack. Now, forget your typical hero's journey, okay? Marlowe throws us right into a whirlwind of revenge.
Whirlwind indeed.
Right. Religious hypocrisy and enough scheming to, well, to make Machiavelli himself blush.
Yeah, you put the mock in Machiavelli.
Seriously. But before we get into all of that, I gotta ask, what makes a character truly villainous? I mean, keep that in mind as we meet our central figure.
Barabbas.
Barabbas, this incredibly wealthy and Jewish merchant. He's living in a society that, well, that never lets him forget he's an outsider.
Not for a second.
Not for a second. And when the governor basically, I don't know, robs him blind to pay off some debts.
Yeah, those pesky Turkish tributes.
Right, right. Barabbas doesn't just, sit back and stew.
Oh, no, not Barabbas.
No, he embarks on this, well, let's just say very creative rampage of revenge.
You could say that.
You could definitely say that. But here's the thing, and this is what I find so interesting.
Go on.
He's surprisingly upfront about it.
Oh, he is. He owns it.
Exactly. He owns it. In a world where, let's be honest, everyone's got a hidden agenda, Barabbas is almost refreshingly honest about his motives.
Almost disarmingly so.
Right. No, obviously this doesn't excuse the string of murders he sets off.
Of course not. No.
But it does make you wonder about the world that, shaped him.
The world that made him.
Yeah.
For sure.
Think about it. He's constantly surrounded by so-called Christians who are just as power-hungry.
Oh, yeah.
And manipulative.
As he is. As he is. Maybe even more so. The governor, Furness, practically embodies this hypocrisy. So you've got this den of, well, deception. And Barabbas's honesty, even when it's, twisted, almost makes him...
Relatable.
I was going to say sympathetic.
Okay, relatable might be pushing it, but I see your point.
Right.
He's not hiding behind piety while he's, orchestrating some grand scheme. It's almost as if, and this is what I love about Marlowe, it's almost as if he's making us ask, is Barabbas a villain born?
Or a villain made by the society that ostracized him?
Exactly. That's the question. And you know what? It gets even more complicated when we consider Abigail.
Barabbas's daughter?
Yes, his daughter. Here we have a character seemingly full of love and loyalty, even converting to Christianity. Or so it seems.
Yes, the conversions. Always a tricky business in this play.
Because is it genuine? Is this conversion genuine? Or is it just a strategic maneuver in a world where faith itself is often a tool for manipulation?
You've got it. Remember the clergy she encounters. They're more concerned with acquiring Barabbas's wealth than with any true spiritual guidance.
Right. Not exactly beacons of morality themselves.
No, not at all. And it throws that whole notion of, sincere religious conversion into question.
It really does. It does. It's almost as if Marlowe is like holding up a mirror to his own society where appearances and pronouncements of faith can mask, well, some pretty dark motives.
Spot on.
But what really threw me for a loop was that even Abigail, this apparent beacon of, goodness, she expresses her own prejudices.
Against Jews and Turks.
Yes, against Jews and Turks. It's a small detail, but it makes you realize that no character is purely good or purely evil.
Nuance is the key word here.
Nuance, right. Even those we initially perceive as virtuous can be tainted by the biases of their time. It's human nature.
And this is Marlowe at his most brilliant. He challenges the audience to confront those uncomfortable truths about human nature, that good and evil aren't always so clear-cut, not black and white.
So much gray area. So we've got Barabbas, the vengeful outsider, Abigail, the morally complex daughter, and then we have Ithamore.
Barabbas's slave.
Right, his slave. He's like, I don't know, he's like...
an overeager apprentice to evil.
Yes. That's perfect. But there's this one detail about him that I have to ask about.
Oh, wait.
His obsession with Barabbas's nose.
Now that you mention it.
Is Marlowe just, going for cheap laughs here? Or is there something deeper at play?
I'd argue it's the latter. Remember, we're talking about Elizabethan England.
Right.
A time rife with stereotypes about Jewish people. And Ithamore's constantly commenting on the size and supposed power of Barabbas's nose.
Yeah.
It's almost as if he sees it as this physical manifestation of all those negative qualities that were attributed to Jews.
So Marlowe is using humor to actually point out the absurdity of these stereotypes. He's making them seem ridiculous by having a character like Ithamore obsess over something as, well, as trivial as a nose.
Precisely. It's social commentary disguised as comedy. He's subtly inviting the audience to recognize and hopefully to reject those prejudices.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Now, let's turn our attention to the supposed antagonist of this whole story. The governor of Malta, Fernez. Now, he's presented as this, righteous leader, the counterpoint to Barabbas's villainy. But from what I've gathered, he's got his own dark side.
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Yes, Fernez is every bit as manipulative as Barabbas, if not more so.
Wow. But he's the one upholding the law. He's the one who seems to have the moral high ground.
Think about his actions, though. He seizes the wealth of the entire Jewish community under the guise of national security. And then he plays religious factions against each other for his own gain. He's constantly manipulating people and events, all while hiding behind this facade of, piety and justice.
So Marlowe he's blurring the lines between good and evil here. It's not a clear-cut battle between hero and villain.
Exactly. He's forcing us to confront this uncomfortable truth that sometimes the people in power, the ones we're supposed to trust, they are just as capable of deceit and ruthlessness as those we deem, criminals.
Wow.
And that's what makes the Jew of Malta so compelling.
Yeah.
It holds up a mirror to society and asks us to question our own assumptions about power, about morality, and the very nature of good and evil.
This is getting deep, and we're just getting started. This is definitely a play that keeps you thinking, and I can't wait to unpack those big themes with you in just a bit. All right, so we're back and ready to really kind of dig into the twisted world of the Jew of Malta,
It's a twisty one, that's for sure.
It is. Before we were talking about how Marlowe just kind of blurs the lines between good and evil, right? Yeah. Makes you wonder, who to root for in this whole chaotic landscape.
Makes you question everything, really. And those blurred lines, they're even more apparent when we start looking at the plays, the structure of it.
Okay, the structure, yeah.
It's often called a tragicomedy.
A tragicomedy.
Yeah. So, I guess it's mixing elements of tragedy and comedy. You get these really shocking acts of violence and betrayal, but then they're kind of sprinkled with, these moments of dark humor.
So you're horrified 1 minute and then kind of chuckling the next.
Exactly. 1 minute you're just appalled by Barabbas's, cold-blooded scheming, and the next you're almost laughing at the absurdity of it all.
It's like whiplash almost,
It's intentional, though.
Yeah.
It creates this really unsettling effect that constantly, challenges the audience. Like, what are we supposed to feel here? Are we supposed to be horrified, amused? Both.
It's like Marlowe's deliberately keeping us off balance, making us question not just, the morality of these characters, but also our own reactions to them.
You got it. It's a brilliant technique, honestly. It forces you to engage with the play on a much deeper level. It's not just passive entertainment.
No, not at all. And that unsettling feeling, it's even more amplified by, the play's breakneck pace and these larger-than-life characters.
Oh, yeah. Here's something else.
Speaking of larger than life, I got to ask about one of the most shocking and heartbreaking moments in the play.
Let me guess. Abigail's death.
Yeah. Abigail's death. I mean, she seems like one of the few genuinely good characters. But then she becomes a victim of her own father's, twisted revenge plot.
Her death it's definitely tragic, and it's a huge turning point for Barabbas. It pushes him even further down that path of vengeance, fuels his hatred for the Christian world that he blames for her death.
It's like whatever shred of humanity he had left, it's just gone. He becomes this cold, calculating machine, driven purely by revenge.
You could say that. The truly devastating part is, Abigail's death, it's a direct consequence of Barabbas' own actions.
Oh, totally.
I mean, he poisons a convent.
Full of nuns.
Full of nuns, including his own daughter, in this fit of blind rage. It's horrific.
It's a truly horrific act. It really highlights, I think, the destructive nature of, unchecked vengeance.
Absolutely. Vengeance can consume a person,
Yeah.
Lead them to commit acts they never thought themselves capable of.
Like poisoning a convent full of nuns.
Exactly. And this cyclical nature of violence, right?
Yeah.
It's a theme that keeps coming back throughout the play.
Yeah.
One act of cruelty just leads to another and another and another. it leaves this trail of destruction in its wake.
It's a bleak worldview, but I mean, maybe a realistic one too. It's very human, right? That this kind of violence just begets more
It's
violence.
hard to escape that cycle. The Jew of Malta, it's not just a story about one man's revenge.
Right.
It's exploring a society, a whole society, where power is obtained and maintained through, well, through ruthlessness and deception.
So it's a commentary on the systems of power themselves.
You can say that.
Yeah.
And this brings us back to that idea of Machiavellian strategy,
Right.
which seems to be the driving force behind, so many of these characters' actions.
Right. Machiavellian. So cunning, deception, a willingness to, I don't know, use any means necessary, right? To achieve your goals.
That's Machiavellianism in a nutshell. It rejects those traditional notions of morality in favor of, pragmatism and the pursuit of power.
No matter the cost.
Yeah.
And we see this philosophy. I mean, it's not just in Barabbas, right?
No, it's everywhere.
It's in other characters like, the governor.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Fernandez is a perfect example. He's presenting himself as this, righteous leader.
Yeah.
But he's constantly manipulating people, manipulating events to secure his own position and to, further his own ambitions.
He's a master manipulator, even if he hides it well.
He's playing the game, just like Barabbas.
Yeah.
So it's not just Barabbas who's, caught up in this Machiavellian web. It's woven into the very fabric of Maltese society.
It's everywhere.
It affects everyone, from the highest-ranking officials to, the most ordinary citizens. Marlowe's showing us that Machiavellianism, it's not just some, personal philosophy.
It's a way of life.
It's a way of life in this corrupt world. It's a system that rewards cunning and ruthlessness. It doesn't leave much room for compassion or, ethical behavior.
So how do you escape that? If it's everywhere, if it's the way things work, can anyone really escape that cycle of violence and betrayal?
That's a huge question. That's a question that hangs over the entire play, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one that becomes even more, pressing as we move into that final act.
Oh, man. I'm ready to see how it all plays out. This has been a real eye-opener. This whole deep dive, it's challenging my assumptions about, good and evil. It's making me think about human nature in a whole new way.
That's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
And remember, The Jew of Malta, it's a play that really, rewards close attention and thoughtful analysis.
It definitely makes you think. It's making me think about the power dynamics, Not just in the play, but in our own world today. And speaking of today, let's keep going because we're going to explore how Marlowe's play resonates with those contemporary issues in the final part of our deep dive. So stick with us. And we are back for the final act of The Jew of Malta. And let me tell you, things get pretty wild. I mean, last we left off, we were talking about, Machiavellian strategy and how it just seems to be the name of the game in this world.
It's everywhere you look in Malta.
Mhm.
And the final act, it throws us right into the thick of it. We see Barabbas, and he's now, allied with the Turks, and they're plotting to overthrow the entire Maltese government. It's a bold move, even for Barabbas.
It's a huge power grab. He's gone from like a vengeful outcast to, I don't know, a potential kingmaker. You'd think he'd be, satisfied. But even with all this power, he can't seem to break free from that cycle of betrayal that we've been talking about.
It's like he's, addicted to the game itself. He can't stop. He ends up betraying the Turks, just like he betrayed the Maltese before. It's this web of deception. And it's so intricate, so complex, that it ultimately, it traps him.
It's almost Shakespearean, this idea of, being hoisted by your own petard.
Yeah.
Barabbas, who, prided himself on being this master manipulator, he ends up outmaneuvered by his own, schemes.
It's a classic case of overconfidence.
Yeah.
It really speaks to the inherent danger of relying solely on cunning. Barabbas becomes so consumed with, outsmarting everyone that he loses sight of, the bigger picture, the potential consequences of his actions.
And those consequences are, they're pretty dire.
Oh, yeah.
It's a cautionary tale, isn't it? It's this reminder that even the most brilliant schemers, they can still fall victim to their own ambition.
Ambition and the relentless pursuit of power. And, Marlowe doesn't let us forget about the human cost of all this scheming.
Yeah.
Throughout the play, we see the body count rise. Innocent people, just caught in the crossfire of Barabbas as well, his relentless pursuit of power.
It's easy to get caught up in, the twists and turns of the plot. But those deaths, those are real. They have an impact, and it's a sobering reminder that these games of power, these acts of revenge, they have real world consequences. People get hurt, lives are destroyed.
And it forces us, the audience, we're right there with these characters, and it forces us to confront the ethical implications of everything that's happening on stage. It's not just a spectacle of violence and intrigue. It's a stark examination of the dark side of human nature.
So, I mean, what's the takeaway here? I mean, we've explored so much: religious hypocrisy, Machiavellian strategy, the corrupting nature of power. I mean, it's a lot to unpack.
And that's what makes The Jew of Malta so brilliant.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you these easy answers. It invites you, challenges you to, grapple with these complex issues, to draw your own conclusions.
Okay, so no easy moral to the story, but as we kind of, wrap up this deep dive, what are some of those big ideas that you think, Marlowe is wrestling with in this play?
Well, as we've been talking about, it's a powerful critique of religious hypocrisy. It exposes, how something is, supposedly pure as faith can be used as this tool for manipulation and control. But it also raises questions about identity and belonging. I mean, Barabbas, as a Jew living in a Christian society, he's constantly reminded of his outsider status.
And that alienation, that feeling of being marginalized, it fuels his resentment, and it ultimately drives his actions.
Absolutely. And that theme of alienation, I mean, that resonates even today. I mean, think about all the conflicts that we see around the world, fueled by, religious intolerance, ethnic prejudice, political divisions. It's all connected to that feeling of being an outsider, of not belonging.
It's amazing to me how a play written, centuries ago can still speak to the challenges that we face in the 21st century. It feels so relevant, so immediate.
It's the power of great literature. It taps into these universal truths about the human condition. And those truths, they transcend time and place.
This has been incredible. I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of the Jew of Malta, the characters, the themes, and its relevance to our world today. It's been a journey.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you. And if there's one thing I hope our listeners take away from this, it's a newfound curiosity about Christopher Marlowe and his work.
Absolutely. The Jew of Malta, it's challenging, but it's so rewarding. And remember, there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to interpreting this play. It's complex, it's fascinating, and it's open to interpretation.
It's about engaging with the ideas, challenging your own assumptions, and letting the play, spark a conversation. That's what good art does. It makes you think, it makes you feel, and it makes you question.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the Jew of Malta.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.